Meat City, baby.
Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with my first video for the new raid in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It's the Sith Triumvirate, and whew, it is difficult. So what we're going to do today is cover Phase 1 of this event, and I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of how the event works, what the boss can do in terms of its power and its moves, what you can do to combat that, some strategies and some tips. And in the background, I'm going to have my team going, and it's my Titans Arena team. It is not the most useful or powerful team that you can do for this event. Right now, the current meta, if you will, for this raid is a JTR, Jedi Training Rey lead with resistance backup, R2-D2, BB-8, and then either resistance trooper and one more, whether it's Finn or Poe or one of the other resistance people that go well with the group. So you can do about 8 to 10 million with that team. So if you have Jedi Training Rey, go check out the Game Changers videos showing how those teams work, and you'll have a lot of success. But we don't all have Jedi Training Rey. We don't all have all gear, all gold, fully maxed out characters. So if you're looking for something, you know, not newbie, but not top level, then maybe this will be of help. I basically took my Titans team is my most powerful characters. They are all gear 12, but they are not maxed out. They don't have any of the gear 12 pieces, and their mods are good. They've got about 80 to 90 plus speed across them all, with secondary speeds and primary speed arrows. But they're not optimized in terms of crit damage and all the other set bonuses that could be going into it. So a good solid B, maybe B plus Titans team is what's on display here. And it's respectable. It's the first time I do the raid. I think I get most of the mechanics right. I certainly make mistakes. I certainly don't have a flawless run. And you can see the damage here. It's not super impressive, but I thought it was pretty good for this first run without any knowledge of the fight. This is literally my first time playing the event. So take a look, and if you see things, if you run a team similar to this, if you make some tweaks, I would love to hear it. Let me know. Give me some criticism. Give me some feedback, because all that is useful as we try to figure out this puzzle together. So how this works is you have Darth Nihilus with 2 assistants, a Sith Marauder and a Sith Assassin. And one of the assistants on his team is going to have a new icon above their head, and if you kill them, you get put on a random member of your team I think it's Indomitable Will event buff. So you can no longer retreat characters out of the phase, but in place of that, what they gave is an event buff for each of the phases. In this phase, one of your characters will start with the buff, and you can get a second charge by killing that assistant character, and it's actually Unbreakable Will. When you trigger that, it's basically a super taunt. All the enemies must attack that character, and that character cannot be defeated. That's really important because Darth Nihilus has his Annihilate ability. And basically the fight is controlling that ability, saving it, timing it properly to absorb annihilates and keep your characters in the fight for as long as possible. The other trick to it, the ads are basic ads. It's how the Sith Assassin and the Sith Marauder work with regular character. So they're just damage dealers. The Assassin can cloak. The Marauder can do his dual saber throw. Other than that, they're not too special. I would recommend burning them down first and then switching your attacks to Nihilus. As of right now, that's the strategy that I've been using. Nihilus himself is quite the challenge. He has his 3 attacks. He has a normal basic attack where he swings his saber that dispels all buffs from your character that he hits, and he steals those buffs and puts them on himself. There are a couple that he cannot give himself. He can't heal, for instance, but he can gain a lot of other buffs. So just because you have 10 buffs on a character, be careful, because if Nihilus steals them, Nihilus can become pretty dangerous. So having a Dispeller on hand can be good. He has his I think it's Force Drain or Drain Force ability, where he automatically, if you have a debuffed character, for each of your characters that are debuffed, he reduces the cooldown on Annihilate, so he can reduce it by 5 if all 5 of your characters are debuffed when he uses that attack. So you don't want debuffs sticking on your characters because it's going to reduce the cooldown for Annihilate. And then, of course, he has Annihilate itself. That is an instant one-hit KO. The only way it won't be is if you have the Unbreakable Will buff up. So, of course, it's going to be... The good thing is you can see all of the attacks and abilities on the boss's bar and what their cooldowns are. So you know when the moves are going to be available and you can plan for it accordingly. Now, the unfortunate part of this event is all the extra things that Darth Nihilus gets as a raid boss. And it's an extensive list, guys. He basically has tenacity up. He doesn't quite have it. You can maybe stick one debuff on him per turn, but every time you do, he gains a lot of tenacity up, or plus to his tenacity. So maybe with one of the hero characters, Luke, for example, CLS sometimes will get his one attack to get some debuffs down. But after that, Nihilus is pretty much resisting everything else until he takes a turn, and he then loses that increased tenacity. In addition, every time you hit him, he gains speed up. He's immune to turn meter manipulation. He regenerates protection, which is a big mechanic here. Nihilus will start with protection. It's a purple bar on top of his health, and it regens on his turn for every, I think it's buffed character, and every time one of your characters attacks him, the first time they do it, if they don't have a debuff on them, they gain the defense down debuff, and that lasts for one turn. If they attack with a second basic, while they have defense down, they grant Nihilus 25% of their max protection. So this is a really interesting mechanic because it basically sets a floor for your entry into this raid. In all the previous raids, you could do some damage. You could go into Phase 1 with your Gear 8 Phoenix team and let Grievous just pound on them, and they would counterattack and do damage. And yeah, it would be 100,000 or 125,000, but you felt like you contributed and you actually were able to do some meaningful contribution to the raid, even when you weren't ready for prime time, even as you were getting your teams ready. You can't really do that now. As you'll see, when I finish this run with the Titans team, I then sent in all my other squads. Again, not optimized, not with their best mods, but, you know, there's a tier 8 first order team that's, you know, ready to go. That was good enough to get BB-8. And they put up 0 damage. Doing damage to the protection does not count as damage to the boss. It'll show up in the individual character part, but when it says your total raid damage for the run, it's a 0. So, I don't know. I feel like that's not the direction we want to go here. I mean, you want this to be hard. You want it to be difficult. It's a brand new raid. If somebody came out with a video this week doing 50% of the damage in Phase 1 with one team, that would be bad. We wouldn't be happy about it because it's new content. We want this to last a while. We want it to be a challenge and a puzzle. But I feel like setting the floor that high is a little bit discouraging. Now, the good thing is, to balance that, I guess, they do have the 7 tiers of this raid. So you don't have to start with the tier 6 and then work your way into the heroic right away. You can start at a lower place. But, you know, I guess I'm speaking from my own personal bias here. I'm in a 100 million GP guild, and I'm the lowest, or one of the lowest, if not the lowest member in terms of galactic power for my roster. So they're there. They're ready to do tier 6 and hopefully soon get into tier 7. And maybe their rosters are a little bit more fleshed out than mine. But I feel like I'm in this position where I have 1, maybe 2 good teams I could put together, and the rest are useless. It's not even worth sending them in. And that's a little disappointing. So, you know, something to consider. I appreciate the mechanics that you want this to be hard, you want it to be a challenge, you want it to be a puzzle, but having it with this protection that regenerates all the time and basically nullifies any damage from a team that's not super well geared and super well prepared, it's a little disappointing. So, not a big deal. I understand it, but if I had my druthers, you know, it would be set up a little bit differently where you could still do something. You could send in a Gear 8 5-member team that has good cohesion and good synergy together, and you could do 50k, you could do 100k, and like, I chipped away. I did 0.1%. I did something to help contribute to the guild as opposed to leaving all those guys on the bench. The other thing is, is this too difficult? And it's too early to tell. It is certainly difficult from what we've seen. If the best that people are able to do with a test account with fully maxed characters is 8 million, and I think the phase has what people are calculating maybe 150 million. Now again, this is all phase 6, tier 6 of the raid, and when we go to heroic, I believe usually the health drops down, so there's less damage you need to do, but other things kind of make up for that. You don't get to rotate your roster. It's a one and done. There's a time limit, all those other things. So this is all first impression. It's based on tier 6, and none of this is me saying, I hate this, I don't like it, I'm not playing the game anymore. This is just first impressions, giving the impression that I have after playing it, and starting a discussion. And I'm completely fine with coming back in 2 weeks and saying, yeah, you know what, it was tuned perfectly. And I don't even know if it's too hard. I'm just wondering if it's too much. If Nihilus has every ability in the game, you can't debuff him. You can't turn meter manipulate him. He has a one-hit KO. His attacks bypass health, or bypass protection, which is something I didn't mention early on. His attacks don't hit your protection. They go right through the protection to your health. So big tip is bring a healer, because eventually he is just going to wear your characters down, because even if you have protection regen, he's just going right through that protection to their health. So I just feel like they wanted to tune it difficult, so they just gave Nihilus everything. Every immunity, every ability, everything that you could put in this game, everything that exists is on this boss character. And I get it. Again, I get it. It doesn't feel like a fair challenge. Again, it's not supposed to be a fair fight, but there's supposed to be a challenge. And again, first week, first time, maybe there's something we're missing. Maybe there's some tweak. And if there is, great. This is just what I've seen after my first exposure to this boss fight. Another thing to keep in mind, Nihilus does, like some of the other bosses, or I think all of the other raid bosses, get 2 attacks in a row when it's his turn. So you really need to keep an eye on his abilities. If he has Force Drain up and Annihilate with a 2-turn cooldown, he could use the Force Drain, and if he takes the cooldowns from his ability, knocks the cooldown down too, he could follow it up right away with Annihilate. I've seen a video where he didn't do that, and he could have, and I've seen videos where he does do that. So you need to time Unbreakable Will for the turn that Nihilus is going to use Annihilate, and your character will survive the Annihilate with 1 hit, and then hopefully you have some kind of heal ready to go to get that character back up and into the fight. In terms of the basic attack that I mentioned, Nihilus has a special, or unique, when your characters attack, like I said, when they attack with a basic, they put defense down on themselves. If they have defense down on themselves, they grant Nihilus protection, and it's a significant amount. So a character like Kenobi, General Kenobi, doesn't really have good... he has the cleanse, which is important. He has the swarm attack, which is a bunch of basics. So if your characters aren't like hitting really hard, that could just beef him up with a whole bunch of protection if you don't do it right. And then his basic attack hits for very little. So every basic attack with Kenobi, if you've got 60,000 or 70,000 protection on him, a basic from Kenobi is going to do negative damage. It's going to not get through the protection and give him a bunch of protection. So a guy like Kenobi might not be important to this roster. And to test that, I did my refresh after the server reset, was able to go back in with my Titans team. I made the one change, as you could see in the first run. I didn't use any healers. For the second run, I swapped out Kenobi for Chirrut, thinking he'll have heal over times, that'll pop up, and he has his health equalization, and maybe that will be enough to kind of beef this team up and make it better. And at the end of it, my damage was almost identical. It was almost the same. But my Chirrut is, I think, gear 10, maybe even 9. Certainly not gear 12. Didn't have as good mods on him. So a weaker character, and I got the same damage. So that makes me think if your Chirrut is modded and geared well, and you sub him in here for a Kenobi, you could probably increase the damage here. And maybe there's some other healers that you could swap in there instead that would also help carry your team. So dealing with the special, with the unique ability to regenerate protection for Nihilus means you need to plan a little bit ahead. It's chess now. It's not checkers anymore. So if you have a character who's ready to go and they've got a special that's on cooldown for 1 turn, know that you can use your basic, and then on their next turn, the cooldown, the special will be ready to go. You can use the special. When you do that, it'll exhaust the defense down, and then you can go back to the basic again. So you just don't want to use basics twice in a row for the same character. Now, that can be challenging if you're calling assists, or if you have like a double tap for certain characters, if they're counterattacking. All those things that are staples from arena runs or from raid runs that we're used to now may not be so ideal. Again, it still works with the Jedi Rey team because there's exposes and they're hitting hard and all those other things. But your normal Phoenix team, I've seen, there's a guy in our guild, 5 Gear 12, 5 Zeta Phoenix squad, and did very little, if any, damage because it's a lot of basics. It's not high damage. They're just a defensive sustaining fight, and they can't get through the protection on Nihilus. So be aware of that mechanic as you come in. Stagger your basics. A basic isn't bad the first time you do it if you don't have defense down on the character. So just plan 1-2 moves ahead. Use your specials in a way, use your basics in a way that you can stagger between them and always let that defense down drop off of your character. Another thing to keep in mind, modding for protection might not be the best idea here. Again, if you have a Kenobi, instead of increasing his protection by another 20,000 with mods, or whatever you can get with the mods, go for something else. Go for offense. Go for whatever. If you're using a tank, protection up on them may not be the best thing if they end up using their basics ever. You don't want to feed protection to Nihilus, and it's based off of their max protection. So if you're looking to min-max this thing, keep that in mind as you're preparing your team to go in. So other than that, I think for now, that's where I've gotten with the raid. Again, this Titans team, Gear 12, not maxed, a solid B squad. They, finish in the top 50 in arena if I push for it. Was able to do 665,000 damage. And again, there's more potential here if I play really well, if I make some tweaks to the team. It can be better, but that's not bad. For the first run, I thought I was pretty happy with that. Not a team that's built for the raid, just me brute forcing this thing, and I was able to get something done. So that was good. But keep in mind, my Gear 8 First Order team, my Gear 8 Phoenix team with a Gear 10 Ezra and some speed mods on them. Any team that wasn't this one had a real hard time. I ran a Darth Vader lead thinking I could get some dots to stick, and had a lot of trouble getting that through. So Vader with his dots is really difficult because you can't get the debuffs to stick. I think Darth Nihilus has a real shot at being a star here because his lead, if you're making him lead, removes all the protection from your allies. So you're never feeding turn meter, you're never feeding protection to Nihilus, and instead you're just constantly racking up damage once you've taken the protection down once. Annihilate does work. It's 100k every time you get that off, so that's really good. And there's some other Sith synergies going on there. If you can get Trooper up, really good defensive character. Healing is a bit of a problem, so when you take an Annihilate, do you have a way to heal that character back up so they don't immediately die even if they survive the Annihilate? These are all challenges that we're going to plan and think about and overcome. So that's going to wrap up this video. Hopefully it gave you guys a little bit of insight into this. Maybe you run a Titans team and it'll help you kind of strategize how to do that. You can see the mistakes I made and how to improve upon it. But this is my call to action to all of you out there. I'm looking for input. I'm looking for information on this. What do you see in my run that can be better? What are you doing differently? What teams are working for you? Let me know in the comments. If you have screenshots to share, if you have footage to share, I'd love to see it. I'd love to be able to commentate over it if you've got some captures. So feel free to leave a comment below or hit the email that I have in the information bar below, and let me know. Good luck with this event. It is going to be a bit of a grind. Hopefully you're going to get through it. Maybe you're ready for the heroic, for the tier 7. If you are, really good luck. I'd like to see some footage from that coming out soon as well. So please leave a like if this video helped you out. I do appreciate it as always. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.